Are live. My friends, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm absolutely so excited. The gentleman that you see here next to me is Chris SD. We are going to pick his brain today on, if you are a songwriter, how to get your song into film and TV. So we're going to pick his brain today for the next hour. I want to give a quick introduction to you, Chris, because, you know, there's a lot of folks selling a lot of different things these days. You are the legit deal. So I want to tell folks who we're dealing with first so they understand. And then if you don't mind, I'm going to just give them a quick brief overview about what we're talking about here. And then I've got some questions for you, and we're going to take some questions from folks. Are you down with that? All right. So
absolutely.
Thank you, sir. So friends, Chris SD, it's helped countless indie songwriters for years now, getting their songs into film and TV. Have you ever watched a movie and you hear a great artist, a great new artist, maybe doing a rendition of some famous song or something, and you're like, man, who is that? You start Shazamming them, you start researching them, and all of a sudden you have your favorite new artist, right? Because it's in an emotional scene in a movie and that sort of thing. This is exactly what Chris does. Started off as an award-winning music producer, wanted to find a way to find indie projects that he worked with to make a bigger splash. He saw how artists could end up in charts simply by placing one good sync placement. And what we mean by sync is taking a song and synchronizing it with the movies, all right? So when, you know, a love scene or something, and here you go, there's that song in that poignant part of the movie, it sticks with you, it never goes away. Now you're researching the artist. Chris not only teaches indie songwriters how to get their music heard by top music supervisors in TV and film, he actually introduces them to the gatekeepers. And if you are watching this, friends, on YouTube, now we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of it right here, right now, but if you want even like literally to watch these gatekeepers in action in another live broadcast, underneath this video there's a link. Don't go there now, just understand that I'll direct you to it again later. And if you're watching on the landing page, same thing. There's a link underneath it that'll take you, that'll basically get you registered for an event that Chris has with those actual gatekeepers in real time, just like we're doing now. So it's like another level up. He's providing that absolutely free. It's an event that happens one time a year, and this is no joke. This is the real deal. So, and in fact, Chris, I have 3 people in my life, just in my inner circle alone, that could benefit from this information. One, you know, my wife's a songwriter in Nashville, but we live now in Florida here. She's had songs in sync before in movies, firework displays, that sort of thing. And so that's one. The lead singer for my band, for Gabriel the Bull, amazing songwriter, and his stuff needs to be in film. And then my daughter, who's also an amazing artist. So I think a few of those folks may be watching in today. So all that being said, Chris, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to pick your brain on this stuff.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. I love just talking to indie songwriters, you know, about like possibilities for sync licensing, because it's such a huge thing. It's the, you know, a phrase I coined and something I've been teaching a long time is that, you know, music supervisors are the new A&R. So they're the new people that are breaking bands. People can jump in and get a, you know, one sync placement, land in the charts and all that. Now, a lot of this, like when I'm talking about this stuff, it's going to sound a little pie in the sky, you know, because it's like, okay, yeah, right. You know, some guy who's talking about something where my music career can get turned around just by, you know, doing this one thing and blah, blah. What I want to do is I want to talk to you guys about, you know, Eric kindly asked me to come and discuss this with you. And I wanted to talk to you really quickly about the stuff that can happen, right? And these are proven things. These aren't like what if things. I've helped countless songwriters get, you know, music into TV and film over the years. I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you how I got into it. But the bottom line is that sync is and why I've dedicated my life recently to this is because sync is the way to get music out there. It's not just like make a living with your music, which you can. It's not just about like, I want to be in a movie or a show or an ad. It's literally about how do I get my music from my bedroom, from my SoundCloud to my 100 to 1,000 fans or whatever. How do I really do something with this, right? Because music is a language. It's meant to be shared. We're all trying to get music out there. I used to be in a band myself, turned into a music producer and all of that. But the whole idea is to share this, right? Is to get the music out into the world so people can hear it, be influenced by that. And that is the goal for Sync. And the reason that I started out that way with getting into Sync was not as a musician. It was later. It was as a producer. Sync was not a thing when I was a musician in the 90s. And it was not cool to be in TV and film. It just wasn't a thing you did because it was like a cable, right? And you'd have all these different channels and different people on there that were like, the producers and stuff. They were making really middle of the road kinds of shows. Ever since things have blown up, we got satellite, of course, came along and all this stuff. Now streaming and everything. There's cool shows. There's cool stuff that you want to have your music in. So that was a big thing that propelled me as a music producer working with indie artists. I used to work with major label artists. I was an award-winning music producer. I had the good fortune of winning 5 Juno Awards, which are like Canada's Grammys, 7 nominations. My favorite thing to do was working with indie artists and breaking indie music because it's just as good. It's just that you don't have, right, the agents and the labels and the publishers propelling you along. So my job was to take that in a studio, do a record, and then I started realizing, man, I'm putting all this energy into this. How can I get out into the world? That's when I discovered sync licensing, started, meeting music supervisors, figured out that was the route to go, which we can get into later. And here we are today. So
beautiful. That's a great introduction. So let me, what I would love to do is kind of bridge a gap, because I know that, when I let my folks know about these sorts of things, we're dealing with guitar players, but you play music because you're writing something, usually, not always, but there's so many songwriters out there, right? And so if I can bridge the gap, folks, going the traditional method, you're signing a contract, you're dealing with A&R, which is arts and repertoire, right? Isn't that right? Artists and repertoire.
Artists and repertoire. Yeah.
Artists and repertoire. So this is where, some guy with a tie says, hey, there's this song, and I think it would be really great for this artist, and they get that song to them. And that's what we call the gatekeepers, and it's not an easy process. I mean, my wife has been doing this for 20-something years, and I've been with her every step of the way with all the deals and the contracts and the lawyers and the this and it's a massive challenge. That being said, getting a song into a movie just a few years ago would seem near impossible. And so what Chris is doing is going around that whole process, which it quite honestly is an industry that is changing so much. I don't want to say it's dying, but it's an industry that's changing so rapidly that it's dwindling down to just not as many songwriters as there was back in the day. Whereas what Chris is doing is literally taking independent songs. It doesn't have to be somebody who's signed, someone who doesn't have a record label, doesn't have a writing deal, but literally taking, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Chris, taking a song that catches an ear and getting it to the right person for the right show, this, that, and the other thing. And why this is absolutely brilliant, friends, is because you can go the route where my wife, who's got 13 million, who's on 13 million records, who you've probably never heard of in your life. She's still on 13 million records on Garth Brooks and all these other folks, Carrie Underwood and what have you. She's been in movies with her songs, but still you don't know who she is. Whereas what Chris does is gets the right song in the right hands, or helps you do that, so that all of a sudden you're watching a movie, you're like, who is singing this song? And now you're obsessed, and you're like me, and you're researching, and you're like, well, how long have they been around? And this, that, and the other thing. So sorry, I just wanted to give that real quick, like layman term of it. Did I get anything wrong there, Chris?
Yeah, no, that was excellent. The only thing that I would want to sort of address a little bit is the very first thing you said about labels. They still exist, obviously, right? We have the Taylor Swifts and we got all those, other artists out there. So labels, especially big majors, are still strong. They are nothing at all compared to the way they were 20 years ago, because of obviously Napster, and everyone knows the story of that. So the thing that's different is back then in, say, the 90s, there were a bunch of independent labels. So you could actually, work really hard, maybe get an independent label deal and dictate a lot of the things that you could do. And nowadays, labels do not. Of course, there's way fewer labels now that can do this because of the economics have completely changed. And the thing is that they can't, or they don't invest anymore in artist building. They used to kind of throw money, you get a demo deal, and then they nurture you along and try to turn you into something they thought they could sell. Nowadays, it's like you got to go out and build this massive fan base. And if you get big enough, then they'll come after you and then you might get a record deal. So there's this huge gap now between what, independent artists are doing and just getting signed. So, getting signed may not be your thing. The beautiful thing about sync licensing is that, one, it does bridge that gap in a slightly different way, just like you were talking about, Eric, is that when you get a sync placement, I literally was on the phone last week. So it was early last week with one of the members, somebody I work with, a musician that I help, right? Mm-hmm. And so she basically she manages her husband, who's a musician. And they got I helped them get a song into a movie, and they're using it for like 2 minutes in this movie that is getting Oscar buzz. And it's going to be, this big movie apparently that's going to come out. It's going to be great. They've already, just in like all the trailers and all the things that are happening, already gotten buzz they're getting an article in Billboard. They're getting buzz from all these different other, fans and stuff who are hearing this stuff. Their metrics are going up and through the roof. They're being invited to play festivals, and they're attracting label attention. That is the kind of thing that is really, that's what it's all about, is getting the attention and getting it out there. So when you think about supervisors being the new A&R, is that you don't have to go to the labels anymore and wait for them, the guys in the suit and tie, like Eric was saying. You can just literally, just get your song to a music supervisor who can put it into a show, movie, and ad. And those of you who are wondering, what the heck is a music supervisor? I know some of you are totally new to this. So just really quickly, licensing your music, the only thing that means is taking a song that you have or that's recorded, and you license it to a show, movie, or ad production for a fee. And then you get royalties on the back end. But you're basically saying you can use this for a specified period of time. Maybe it's in perpetuity, could be forever, but you're fine with it because it's a contract saying it can only be used in this show, movie, or ad, and they can use it when they want, and they have to pay you royalties, and you almost always get a sync fee up front. And a sync fee is usually in the thousands of dollars, typically. So it can go all the way from $500. Well, pro bono, if you have a friend who's a student, right, and they're making an indie film, you might donate your song. Might get $500 for reality TV or something. Then it starts to move into $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 for a good network placement. I've gotten artists $30,000, $20,000, $10,000 for one placement. So that's how lucrative it can get. And so that's what licensing is. And the people who do it are the music supervisors. They're hired by the production studios, the producers and the directors to find music and place it in their shows, movies, and ads. And the job of the supervisor is to find the music. And then if the directors and producers say, yeah, that's cool, then they clear it, which means that they call you up and they say, do you own the publishing? Is there anybody else who owns the publishing that I need to know about? And making sure all that, T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So that's the basics there of the workings.
It's absolutely fascinating. Now, I got a bunch of questions, but there's no way we're going to get to them all. But one of the questions that I have is, why wouldn't these music or the gatekeepers, we'll call them, why wouldn't they just go to Taylor Swift and grab their song? Why wouldn't they, like there's a more popular song or more popular artist, or why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The reason they don't do that is because they don't have the money. And so what happened was, back in the day, they used to have just composers. Composers used to do everything for TV and film, right? 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s started to change and all that. But it was all about composers. And then they started saying, oh, well, let's put in some popular songs from some big artists. So they used to take their budget, and then they used to take some away from the composer, and then they'd have to spend a certain amount on like a big artist, Elton John or something, or whoever. But it cost them a lot of money, because they're major label artists. And so that nowadays they figured out that, wait a minute, we don't have to get, Billie Eilish on this thing. We don't have to get some, who like what your greatest heroes. We don't have to buy their song. We can go to an indie artist or an indie band who gives us the same vibe. The music sounds similar in the same ballpark, but they get the same emotion, and we can pay them a fraction of the amount. So instead of $100,000, we can just pay them 10. What a deal. Well, I'm sure you're not going to 10 grand, if they use your song.
Right.
So
right.
It's an amazing time for indie music. Yeah.
Is that why a lot of times you hear a famous song done by an artist that's not the original artist?
Yeah, like a cover,
Yeah.
That's certainly one way they do it. They'll. I was just watching a movie the other night with the family, and they had a cover song on there, and it was a Beatles song. It was like "Here Comes the Sun," I think, and they had, obviously it sounded almost the same, but they had someone else singing it, and I realized, oh yeah, it's not the same master. They re-recorded it, so it saves them money by not having to. They pay the publishing part, but they don't have to pay the master part. But that is atypical. They're not usually after people who sound like anybody. They want innovative covers. And there's one thing, Eric, I got to mention right off the top that people might be wondering is a lot of people think that you have to listen to what's on TV and film and then figure out what you think's going to fit there and go write something like it, right? Like you got to write something what they want, not what you do. Is totally not true. So there are people who do that. There's a part of like, a whole section of the industry that produces music to sound like things or whatever. The majority of music that gets into TV and film is about authenticity. And it's not from me. Don't take my word for it.
Right.
It's my music supervisor friends that I know that. I've known this for years. They want something that's authentic. And how do you get authenticity? It's when it comes from the heart. It's when it's written in the moment. It's coming from you in a real way. So instead of listening to shows and, and all that, figuring out what do I write to get in there, think about writing the songs the way you write them and then find homes for those songs. So ignore ones that are not suited to you and go after the ones that suit your music.
Beautiful. So that Technotone had just asked a question here. I just put it on the screen. Is do you have to change your song to make it suitable for TV film? So it sounds like to me that a lot of times you don't. That they're just taking the master and they're like, dude, that's the song we want. We're going to use 30 seconds. You're going to get this much money. Boom. And there's probably a single song contract or another question there. Do you need to have a lawyer? That's a great question. Tone. Sorry, tongue-tied there. So that's another question. Is man, the amount of money that my wife has spent on lawyers negotiating, going back and forth, is just enough to make someone not want to do it. Whereas this sounds like something that, like, if someone says, "Hey, we love that song," then it's just a matter of, you don't have to go through it the backwards way of like getting a contract, getting a deal, then the song gets played. It's more like, hey, we like that song, let's talk.
Yeah, it's not like typical label stuff at all. It's really like kind of a terms of use contract. You really don't need a lawyer. You can get one if you want to have one to look at them, look at it or whatever. Not a big deal, but they're all standard. They're really standard. They're easy to read. The contract, you can go through. They're typically like something you can handle on your own. It's not a big deal. It's very fast, very quick.
Yeah. Someone's asking here. Okay, so someone's asking, does sync work for songwriting that is not necessarily a great singer, or does the songwriter need to hook up with a singer first? So I guess probably another way of phrasing that is when like the average song, that's presented, are they like, hey, we like this song, but it really needs to be redone? Or is it most of the time it's like, no, we like the master, which, friends, a master is, this is the tape, we're done with it, here you go, right? So what, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, yes, to answer your, first part of your question, like the good singer bit, right? So good singer's relative. So we could talk about Bob Dylan for a second if we wanted to.
Right.
Is Bob Dylan a good singer? Well, according to his record sales and his fame, and I like listening to him, he's a great singer.
Yeah.
Technically, not really,
Not,
He doesn't, so if you're a singer with character like Bob Dylan, and you got your vibe, and you do it in your way that is attractive to people, then you are a good singer. So just to get that out of the way, you don't have to be classically trained. I just want to mention that. So that's done. In terms of the master part, like if you're saying, and I like sing a demo and then bring it, and then they say get a better singer, it's typically not done that way. You've got to do the legwork yourself mostly. Once you get into really close relationships with soups, then, which is short for supervisor, then you can basically talk to them, and they can do stuff like that. That's not a big deal. And you can like remix and do things like that. You want to have your master ready to go. So you want to kind of listen to your song. And we don't have time to get into it now, but I basically teach indie songwriters how to do all this. And one of them is vetting, meaning how do you find out what works? You're not the best judge, trust me. You want your vetting group to help you decide that. And once your vetting group says, this is what, I think is cool, or you need to change, you go and do that. And it's great. If you need a new singer, just hire a singer. No big deal.
That all sounds very logical. Now, you're going to be doing something, I guess it's this Sunday with the gatekeeper. So I want to make sure that any information that you're going to be covering there, that we're not duplicating it, because folks have the opportunity to sign up for that for free underneath this video, right? There's a link in the description of the video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're on the landing page, it's underneath the video, friends. And so that's an event, another 1 hour event, if you will. It's this Sunday, I believe the 14th. Am I right in saying that? And can you tell us a little bit about that? Because also that will help me, because I know kind of what's going on there a little bit from what you've told me, but I want to make sure that we're not duplicating information that you guys may be covering there.
Yeah,
so what's that event about?
Yeah, so way back when I was figuring out this licensing thing, and I thought, how am I going to get these indie artists I'm working with into TV and film? I started looking around, and the first things that I saw were music libraries. A lot of you might be in music libraries already. Sync agents, publishing companies. What do you mean by
music library? Like,
so
like
music
Taxi,
libraries.
Or is that even a thing anymore?
Well, they're more of they're a different sort of thing.
Okay.
Music libraries, there's a lot of them out there. Music libraries are essentially a big repository of music. And you could get off this call and you could look up music library, and you could literally sign a terms of use thing and upload your songs today into a music library. And potentially, if some supervisors or whoever wants to use your music can go in there and they can find your music, and they can stick that into TV and film and different, stuff online and stuff like that. They sound brilliant. Music libraries really, satisfy an important part of, sync licensing. Here's the rub, though, right? Here's the problem. The problem is that there are millions of tracks in these libraries because they're easy to get into. Absolutely. And so what that means is that you're one, or maybe you can put 500 songs in there, and you're still 500 songs in millions. So it's a little like if you imagine a box store. That's like a music library is like a box store. Imagine that. Supervisor comes to the box store to get something. Music supervisor walks in. They got to walk in the door. They got to walk all the way to the section that you're in. Then or the department even. Then the section. Then the shelving area. Then they got to go to the right shelf. And then on that shelf, they got to pick you out from all the other things on that shelf and grab your song. So the beautiful part about libraries is that the supervisor always ends up with the sync placement. They're going to walk in and get something and come out. The library always gets the sync placement because the supervisor is going to grab a song. What are the odds it's going to be your song?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
tiny, you know?
like YouTube, the way YouTube used to be, the way it is now. It's like someone putting a video up there. It's like who's going to find it? So is that why you don't work with music libraries and agents as much as say indie artists, or is
Yeah,
there
I don't
other
work with
reasons?
them at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not even as much. Yeah, I work strictly straight with music supervisors. So the supervisors are the ones who actually put the music into TV and film. So way back then, I figured that out. And I'm like, well, how do I was, fortunate enough to get to the top of the recording industry in Canada. How can I get to the top of the sync industry? Well, it's by getting to know music supervisors. Why am I going to go through the middlemen? And so everywhere I looked, there were barriers. It was always a middle person guarding the way to the top of the mountain, and they wanted a cut. And those libraries and agents typically take half your money and parts of your publishing, if
Yeah.
you even get a sync placement. I don't know musicians who are in libraries, and I know a lot of them, who get sync placements. It just doesn't
Right.
happen because it's difficult. It's like a lottery. So I started going straight to the supervisors, and I realized I can start introducing. I didn't want to become an agent. I didn't want to start pitching music myself. So I
Right.
thought, I'm just going to introduce my artists I work with to the supervisors. And supervisors love working with artists more than going to libraries, because the way they put it, the faceless libraries are just a bunch of songs I got to go through. They love seeing the person behind the music. They love hearing the story. They love
Right.
supporting it, because supervisors are not these people sitting in ivory towers with suit and ties. They're cool, down to earth people like you and us. They're either musicians, have friends who are musicians, and they love music. That's why they became supervisors.
Yeah.
So they want to support that, and it's such a great thing. So what I do is I can't work with everybody who asks me, but I can work with a certain number of indie songwriters, introduce them to the music supervisors, the top ones, to form those relationships. So I step out of the way and let the indie songwriters form those relationships, get a shot, get a chance to meet the people at the top, And so this panel that I do once a year, this Sunday, I've invited this Sunday coming up, I've invited 5 of my top music supervisors who are friends of mine that I deal with all the time. They've synced music for artists I've worked with and stuff. They're going to come out and they're going to dish on all the stuff that basically you want to know, that you need to know.
That's cool.
So you're not listening to people like me. You don't know me. I'm just, Eric knows me, and I assume you trust Eric, and Eric's super cool.
You've had a little bit of success in the area, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I first met Eric, I was like, man, this guy is so chill. I wish you were my life teacher. I know you teach guitar, but I was like, he's such a cool vibe. He's so cool. But the bottom line is that don't take my word for it. Come to the panel. I put it on. It's free. You don't have to fly to LA and get a hotel and pay for food. Show up. We send you a link. Show up, hang out for an hour, and hear the actual people who do it. I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions, reveal some questions from the crowd, and they're going to basically answer all these burning questions that you have about how do I connect with them? What are they working on now, to see if you have music? I know you guys are mainly guitar players or musicians who want to learn to do guitar. There's lots and lots of guitar tracks that get into TV and film. You should hear from the people who do this, how you can do that. And that's what this whole panel is about. It's 1 hour. So
okay, what time is it on Sunday?
now you got me. I think I don't want to quote it. It's like
That's all right.
10 or 11. My team knows all this stuff.
If they click the link, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
if you guys, friends, if you want to be part of this, which if you're a songwriter and you're not, no excuses, because this is a golden opportunity to literally for free sit in with these pros and hear it straight from the horse's mouth. That's this Sunday. The link is in the description of the video and also in the landing page underneath the video. Let me ask you something, Chris. And this may pertain, it may not. I think it does. But in regards to metadata, I've heard this word thrown around a lot. What is it, and why is it important? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So metadata, for those of you who don't know, is basically data that's embedded in a file. So when you have a music file, you can put data that's embedded in an actual file so that no matter where the file goes, that data follows it because it's inside the file. Now, you can't embed into WAV files, but you can embed into MP3s, AIFFs you could too, but those are kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. But essentially, MP3s are the currency of the sync world. Everything is MP3, not what you hear on TV. Those are WAV files. But when the supervisor finally says, okay, we've got your MP3, I took it into the spotting session, which is like a session where the director and the producers and the supervisors are there, and they listen to your song underneath the scene, they watch it, and they're like, this is awesome. We want to do this. Supervisor calls you up, drops you an email, whatever, says, hey, we want to use your song. You send them the WAV file at that point. Up until then, everything's MP3s. Within the MP3s, you need to put metadata into that for sync licensing at the very least. Because just one thing that can happen, is, I hear this all the time, is supervisor gets a song, they absolutely love it, they think it's great, it's going to fit into this like awesome thing. It's maybe a month later, 2 months later, sometimes it happens a year later, and they go to find out whose song it is, and there's nothing in the metadata because no one filled it out. They don't know where to find it. They're not going to spend the time hunting you down, going through their inbox 2 months ago to find you, and out it goes, and they just pick the next song. So you need to have your metadata there, and it also helps them search for it, because they all take those MP3s when they receive them, and they put them into a filing system, their own filing system. Then they can do a search and find that MP3. So the last thing I got to say about the MP3
is that something that you guys teach, or that you? It doesn't sound terribly difficult.
It's not that difficult, but there's certain things that you need to know, and so I actually have a cheat for that, like a metadata cheat sheet, which basically tells you exactly what you want, and what to put in, what not to put in, and so on. So the bottom line is that just remember, metadata is important to have embedded in MP3s. And the last thing I want to say on the MP3 thing is that don't think that the whole reason I'm here is, and if you've tried before, you can't just send MP3s to music supervisors and expect them to call you back. It just
and so obviously where I'm at, married to a professional songwriter, and then I have a lot of folks that are like, hey man, here's a song, and the rest of the story, right? Can you give us just like a basic idea why that doesn't work?
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially the problem is that the cat's out of the bag. Everybody wants to get into music licensing because they know it's the new way, right? It's the music supervisors or the A&R. It's the new way to get music out into the world fast, quickly, lucrative, very lucrative, and so everyone's trying to do it, right? It's like trying to stand out on SoundCloud or something. So supervisors are inundated by not just indie songwriters. They've got publishers and labels and libraries and agents, and everyone's emailing them all the time. They get tons and tons and tons of songs. There's no way they can listen to them all. So they have their go-to people. That's the way they work, just like you and I work, right? Anybody watching this. The way you work is that, and I'm not talking about your friends. I'm talking about companies and all the spam you get and all the choices you got to make, right? We're just inundated with like stuff. Everyone's trying to sell us something, which is, can get a little, irritating. What do? We start to narrow our field down and decide, filter it. Who do we trust? That's what it comes down to. Who's walking the talk? Where are we, where are the results happening? That is the important part. And so that is what supervisors do too, is they just decide, I know I've got this publisher, or I've got this agent, or I've got this whoever that always sends me the right stuff, and I may not pick the music every time at all, but they always send me good stuff. I'm going to let them know what I'm looking for. I'm on that list. I'm on the inside circle with that. And I worked really hard to get there. And they trust me. So the music that I give them of the indie songwriters I work with, it gets heard and it gets placed. So that's really the difficulty of getting there, is you've got to know someone who's got those connections. Because just shotgun approach, throwing the spaghetti in the wall, you'll be doing it all day long,
Yeah, somebody, Elizabeth asked here, how do you get in touch with a music supervisor? And it's not, obviously there needs to be some sort of liaison, I would imagine. I know that, there's the amount of folks that want to be in the music industry and that want to write songs and what have you is great, and the amount of folks that get to do it is small, because that small amount of people are persistent and they're logical, and they figure out the networking part of it. If it's like you could be the best songwriter in the world, if someone doesn't hear that song and say, hey, I'm going to put you in this place, then you have to do the networking. So, and there's a ton of folks who are mediocre, but they do the networking correctly. So the question, how do you get in touch with a music supervisor just on their own? It's probably, is that an impossibility? Is it very, very difficult? Or do you need to have a liaison? Like, how does that work? Elizabeth is asking.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or is that what you're going to be discussing on Sunday?
Yeah, I was going to say that there are a number of ways of doing that. It is not impossible for you to reach music supervisors on your own. It's not impossible to do that. And we're going to be talking about that on the panel. That's going to be one of the big questions, is like, how do people connect with you? Okay, so really come to the panel, because we can dive a lot deeper into it. It's a long thing. I know Eric's going to be like listening to me talking for 10 minutes going like, I got to move on to the next question. So, but show up on Sunday, just hit the link, register. It's free, right? And guys, just so you know, again, you don't know me, but if you put you got to register, right? You got to put your email address in there, and you got to put your name. No one's sharing your email address, okay? It's strictly to know where to send the links to you and all that stuff, okay? Just so you know, we're at Sync Songwriter, we're very much like that, and I know Eric is definitely like that. We always pick the people we work with very carefully. So,
absolutely. Now, Mary Beth is asking, how much is a licensing fee for a song? And just to recover this, Mary Beth, Chris, you said, it can go anywhere from pro bono if it's a local, budget type of film, but usually starting about $500, $1,000 on up to 5 figures. Anything else that you want to add to that?
Higher.
Six.
Wow.
Wow.
6 figures.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, if you get into a good ad, like a nationally syndicated ad, you're into the 6 figures.
Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. So, okay, I was going to say something, but it doesn't quite pertain to that exactly. I had a friend who sang for a Folgers commercial, but that was just even her voice. It wasn't even her song. It was the best part of waking up, and she sang that, and she said, and she had 1 or 2 number ones on the Christian chart. And she said she made way more from just having her vocal on that commercial, on that Folgers commercial, than she ever did with the number ones that went to radio. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know that's probably not surprising to you. So Robert's asking, would this apply for a lyricist, or should it always include music? Or would they suggest a music style? I mean, that's kind of like earlier on. We more need to be a product that's presented like, hey, this is it, we're ready to go, right? Because they're moving quick on this stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So quickly about musical style, there's a place for almost anything in the sync world. The sync world is massive. It's growing every year. There's such a demand for music. They need it for all this stuff. Even YouTube's doing stuff now. So there is such a huge demand for music. And, I've helped indie artists who do meditation music, show tunes, contemporary smooth jazz, so they all get placements. The thing is that you're going to have the big ones, right? You're going to have rock, hip hop, country, and pop, right? Those are the big 4. And so you're going to get most of the sync placements happening there. But the industry is so big that, even if you write meditation music and you're a sliver of that, it's still massive. And the beautiful thing about that sometimes is you can become the big fish in a small pond, meaning that if you're dominate the, meditation music thing, meaning that you have the right connections, the right relationships at the top, they just go to you whenever they need a track. They don't go, why would they, they're human. Why would they spend effort looking around? They just like call you up and say, hey, do you have something else that's more like this? Yeah, I do. All right, boom, there. It's important to that.
Going along with that, then, I'm sorry to cut you off there. Yeah. Did you have more to add to that, Chris?
No, it's
okay. Good. Okay, so which kind of I want to piggyback off of that. I would imagine that there are instrumentals. I mean, because you hear it all the time, just music being played. So for the guy out there, for the girl out there who's like, I have instrumentals. This isn't going to work. Instrumentals is a big part of sync, isn't it?
Yeah. So your ideal situation, it's not the only situation by a long shot, but your ideal situation is to have, if you have it, a mix with like lyrics like a song, song with a singer, and then an instrumental mix, meaning that you did a remix and you muted the vocalist. So you have an instrumental only version. And what they often do is they'll either use the instrumental only version, or they'll cut between the two. You know, like for example, you might have a scene, just making this up, right? Someone's in a park, a couple's in a park hanging out, and they're talking, and there's an instrumental, your song's playing underneath instrumentally, because they don't want your lyrics getting in the way of the dialogue. So it plays along, and then whatever happens, conversation ends, one of them gets up, walks away under a street lamp, the snow's falling, your vocal comes in, which is the perfect lyric for what's going on, and that's right? Or they'll use just the whole song with the vocals. So the only thing that has difficulty getting into TV and film that is instrumental is if you write kind of more soundscapey kind of stuff, like more like sounds, vibes, and things like that. That's a little harder for supervisors to kind of, that would be more go to a composer. But if you have like stuff or song structured, even if you don't have a singer or lyrics, you can absolutely get your guitar music into TV and film if you've got some good cut points, like you have, it sounds like, oh, that's kind of where the verse is, and this is like the hook, the chorus, and stuff like that. So
yeah, this is an interesting question here, Chris, the way this is posed. Is there a sheet that lets you know what kind of songs a supervisor is looking for, and if so, how can we get those sheets? So, but it sounds like to me that it's less about having look or creating a specific style. It's more like, is this a good quality song? Is this something that lots of people would like, right? Am I answering that right? Or so how would you answer that?
No.
One? Okay.
Yeah. So so first off, whoever asked that, very, astute. There are sheets that way, and they're called briefs. And so supervisors send briefs out to their go-to people and say, this is what the show is or the movie. Sometimes it even includes a clip of it and say, here's the scene. And here's what we're looking for. They typically have a placeholder song, meaning a song, usually a famous one they can't afford. They have stuck it under the scene that the director loves or something. So we can't afford to pay this, so we need a song that elicits the same emotion. And they send that out. And so the go-to people get the brief, and they look at that and say, do I have something like that? And they go through their collection and, oh, I do, and then they'll submit that. If they don't, the good ones don't submit anything. They just hold off. Jiminy Cricket, if you've got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. And greatly appreciate it, because supervisors hate the fact if they get something, it's like, I did not ask for, death metal. I asked for summer fun pop, Why did they send me that? Like, they stop using you because they think you don't know what you're doing. So, but those are called briefs. Briefs are basically, if you see a brief out there floating around, they're either not real usually, or they're done. They're no good. Typically, because supervisors don't share the briefs with the public, because there'd be a tsunami of music that's complete.
Absolutely.
Everyone would just send music. They wouldn't even care. They'd be like, I just want to sync, and they'd send whatever. And the supers can't handle that. So they don't allow those briefs typically to go out to the public.
Okay, very good.
We get them.
You get them, right. And then, right, okay, so, and then you have your folks that you work with that hey, this guy is great at orchestral, instrumental type things, or this guy's great, this gal's great at fun, poppy, ukulele style types. Like, I imagine that you have an idea as to, with the folks that you work with, who does what and who to go for that.
Yeah, I mean, every year I look for indie music to introduce, indie musicians to introduce to my supervisor friends. So that's where our music comes from, not outside of that. I'm not an agent. I'm not a library. I don't have as many songs as possible. I just go with the indie songwriters that really want to make a difference in their lives, and we work hard on their music and their presentation and what they need to do. And then I introduce them to the supervisors once they've got that figured out. And then that's the music that we use, is with just that group of indie songwriters. That's it. And then because we do it in such a nurturing way, that's how come we get all the sync placements we have. We have the success that we've gotten in the past.
Yes. Okay, I have a few other questions here, but I want to make sure that I ask the most poignant ones here, because this is fantastic. I mean, the information. I imagine most folks, I have some idea of how the industry works because of working with my wife. She had Like I said, she had a song placed in Renee Zellweger. It was a movie, something home, like coming home or back home, or anyhow, it was a Carrie Underwood song that she had many years later, and they wanted it, and I forgot how much she made for it and what have you. But obviously, she had a record deal to do that, and you're kind of bypassing all that to where, which what a headache, all that other stuff is. Okay. Yeah, someone asked, oh, okay, the guitar tracks. Yes, there are just guitar tracks. We covered the music library. It's easy to put stuff in a music library, but that's not where folks are looking. There was something else here that I just glanced at that I really wanted to ask here. I think you covered this, but I think it would be good to mention. And we did get another question here about someone asking about the broadcast. Friends, there is another broadcast. I'm going to put this question on the screen here. There is another broadcast that Chris SD is going to be doing this Sunday, and it's with the gatekeepers themselves. So this is going to be a level up from where we're talking about today. What we wanted to do today is kind of wet your feet, get you kind of understanding what this process is. What we're doing, or what Chris does, is he's been working in this industry for quite a while, has had massive success in it, and now has brought other people and shown them the way. This is how to do it. This is who to talk to. This is when, all the nitty gritty. And that's what he's going to be covering in high detail on Sunday. The link to get into that is underneath the video, description of the video, or if you're in the landing page, it's going to be underneath there. So, and you can't, we're not doing that live on YouTube. In fact, I'm not going to be doing that. I'll be watching it because I'm absolutely fascinated with this myself, especially where my wife is at in her transitional part with music and that sort of thing. My daughter, like I said, the singer for my band, he's got music that's absolutely phenomenal, and it needs to be out there. So, so the link for that is below. But this was the question, and I think you've answered this, but I want to pose it again. We've got some new folks that are watching. Is music licensing mostly for pros with years of experience, or do you have to be famous or have a label deal to get music into TV? We kind of covered that a little bit, but if you can just kind of give that a brief overview of that.
Yeah, of course. You don't see the beautiful thing about sync licensing is that the only thing that matters is the song. And I do these interviews with, I do an interview with just some of the success stories that happen. And if you were able to see them, you would be pleasantly surprised to see the number of kinds of genres of music that are there. Mm-hmm. The age groups of everyone are all over the place. You got people in their 60s sync placements. We got people in their 40s, 30s, 20, all over the place. And these are mostly people who just write in their bedroom, just maybe some, woman who's married to a farmer in New Zealand, I have somebody who's like a student in Austria, and, a bunch of people in the US who just are regular people, talented musicians, talented songwriters who just music never really would see the light of day otherwise. And that's the thing that drives me. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to have a label deal. You don't have to be in it. Your song's got to be good, okay? It doesn't have to be great. It's just got to be good. It's got to be above the threshold. Sound like everything else getting into TV and film, essentially. So you have to have a certain amount of quality to your writing and, to your production and stuff like that. Other than that, the supervisors, they just want the song. It doesn't matter, so... I
think you may be answering what Irish Greg just asked here, and he said, what minimum quality of music is expected? Meaning, it sounds like he's got music that he's proud of, but he says, but the production quality is not what it should be. So meaning that he uses BandLab for free online, but would more expensive software be expected to finish my music? And so I don't want to answer that, but does the song need to be a finished product, here you go, or do they sometimes go, dude, this is a killer song if it sounded better, or or does someone can you hand it off to someone to do that? Like, what happens if, should say in your scenario, you come across a song that is dynamite and the production is crap?
Well, I'm lucky because I have an online recording studio, and so I kind of shepherd people over and say, like, we can do this, and the people I work with they get it at cost, basically, but they don't have to use me, but it's just there if they need it. So I have an unfair advantage. I have world-class producers and people who are better than me at certain things working with me, and we get music into TV and film. We get label deals with it. We do all kinds of cool stuff. So, but the bottom line is, here's what you do if you're unsure about your music. The first thing that you do is you stick your track into a playlist with your heroes or people who get their music into TV and film. All right, put it in a playlist. Put it on random. Don't listen to it. Go chop some carrots for dinner, just so you're kind of listening to it. Listen to the playlist, kind of get into it. When your song comes along, gauge yourself. How did you feel when your song came along? Were you like, wow, that fits right in there. That sounded like it belongs in there. Right? This could be a Spotify playlist and it just is flowing great. You're golden. If, on the other hand, you feel like, oh man, the energy dropped a little, or it doesn't sound quite as good, or whatever, you've got a little bit of work to do. But the beautiful thing is, now you know what to fix. And this is not going to be a problem for the rest of your life because you figured it out. Can you imagine if you're not getting success with your music only because you couldn't get the production right? The production is the easiest thing. The songwriting, the composing is the hardest part, right?
Absolutely.
It's like guitar playing is the hard part. Going to buy a guitar and an amp is not that hard. You got to save some money.
Absolutely, man. That puts you in the catbird seat there, because if you can do that, because if you find a great song, you can say this is a great song, but needs to be polished so that we can present this. Yeah. And so essentially, you do work with songwriters who present songs like that, and then for a cost. For just the cost of producing it, that's something that can be done.
Just to stop you right there, Eric, I'm not here schlepping my studio for sure.
No.
I don't want to come on here and say, work with me and stuff. Like, that's an afterthought. And really, normally I work with people who I work with in sync and stuff like that. Here's what you should do, right? Happy to work with you. Want to email me? You can email me at Sync Songwriter and we can talk. But what you should do is at least go online instead of just emailing me or just doing it on your own. Find a producer within your budget who can help you do it in real time. Because one, they're working on your music. So get a customized teacher. Get them to send you the files so you can see what they're doing. Go look at the plugins and be like, oh, I didn't know my vocal sounded great with this plugin chain. This is cool. Hit save, right? You've got that. Work with other producers within your budget while you're getting good at production, because you don't want to waste great songs on mediocre production. I did that. Right. I spent too long fussing about with my songs, trying to learn to be a good producer, that I never really released the stuff because that was like, wasn't quite good enough. I mean, this is years and years ago before I became a music producer proper. So, but in the meantime, just do that. It's not that bad. And the last thing I'll say, time and money, right? They're connected. So if you think, well, Chris, I got to spend money on a producer that I could do it for free at home. It's not really free, because you're going to be spending all the time doing this. And it's great that you're building it up, but it costs you. The time costs you money, right? So try to do both at the same time. Learn from the producer while you're doing it. And in a year, you're going to be rocking it yourself, and you can whatever. But you're not going to waste great songs you have now on production that's just like, yeah, sorry, next.
Man, and I think about some of the songs that you hear in, I don't know, like Wes Anderson, like a Wes Anderson movie or whatever. You might, like Needle in the Hay or something, where you just got a guitar and a vocal. It's like you hear stuff like that often if it's vibey enough, and if the song, like sometimes the sparseness of it will give it that vibe that's perfect for that scene where they don't want some big production.
Yeah, and no vocal. I mean, how often do you hear like just a, dobro or like a, some wailing electric guitar just over like a.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a thing, like, so there's tons of place for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question from Robert. He's saying, is there a monetary investment the musicians need to make to get noticed, or are sites requesting you to pay scams?
Well, I don't want to paint a big broad brush on everything. But what I don't like, what I don't like is I don't like the idea that you pay money, well, you send it off. You basically send the money off into the blackness, into
Done
the
it.
inky darkness,
I've done it.
and you send your file, and you don't know what's going on. Like you don't know what's happening. You just send it off, and you wait, and you listen, and you get an email back, and it's like no, usually, right? I don't know. Maybe you got selected, or what does that even mean? So I'm not going to sit here and diss sites that do that because I don't know. I don't follow them. I don't do things like that because I don't like that just in general in life. I like to have control over things, see what's going on. Transparency is really important to me, honesty, integrity, all of that. So you only get that when you see what's happening. So that's why I like to just go for the gold, go to the top, go to the actual people who place it, and don't waste time on, whether they're just taking your money or not. I don't even want to question it because you just don't know, right? That's the problem.
Yeah. Bose Ed is asking, are stems important? It sounds like he's, asking about, stems folks are like the individual tracks
Yeah.
when you're mixing. Is that something that's important to be sending?
Yeah, just to quickly clarify, so stems are used differently in the recording world nowadays than are in the sync world. What stems actually are, and the word's been kind of used differently, is stems are submixes of all your instruments. So for example, let's take a drum kit, is that your snare mic and your under snare mic and your tom mic and your tom mic and your overheads, those are all submixed down to a stereo pair and called the drum kit. And it can include the effects like the reverb, whatever you're using on your kit, the compression and stuff. And that becomes the drum stem. And then the bass is usually on its own. Background vocals are all on a stereo. Even if you have 10 background vocals, are all on a stereo pair. Those are the stems. That allows the sound editor to go in and just move one fader and turn the kit up, the drum kit up and the drum kit down without having to remix it.
Yeah,
so
I imagine that's kind of cart before the horse. That's something that they may ask for once they're like, dude, we like this song, but like,
Yeah. They're not that common. You don't have to have stems. If you don't have them, it's not a big deal. It's nice to have them, but it's in the minority the times they ask for them.
Yeah. Good stuff. Chris, I know you've got a lot of things to do here, so we got about another 3 minutes. I want to make sure that we make good use of it. And when we end here, I want you to stay on for just a minute because I want to talk to you for just 1 second after we shut down the broadcast here. But friends, if you have any last questions, now's the time to do it. I have a few other questions on here, but I want to make sure that we make best use of the time because there's probably, including what's on the screen here and what I have, probably another 20, 30 questions. It's not going to happen in the next 2 minutes, okay? So,
Hey, Eric, I
yes,
just want
go
to
ahead,
mention
Chris.
one thing, just for those who just showed up. When you mentioned earlier, you were saying like Sunday's panel coming up is
Yes.
like a level up from what we're doing here.
Yeah.
You guys, you need to understand that it'd be literally like if we were on a guitar little call here right now together, and then next Sunday we're bringing in Keith Richards.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So it's a massive step up because you're going to hear from the very top people in the industry who place music in the top films, shows, and ads. And so it's less about me and it's all about them. So this Sunday, that's what you're coming out for. Okay, just so you know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, what we did today here is basically I want to hand you off to Chris. I want you guys to understand that this is the guy. I'm not the guy, but I have you guys that I want to get the information to. That's what this event is about. That's what this 1 hour is that we're closing down here in just a minute here. But the real nitty gritty is going to be at the event that is going to be this Sunday with Chris and I think 5 of those gatekeepers. So that's where the nitty gritty is going to be happening. I highly suggest if you're a songwriter and you're at all interested in this, it'd be foolish not to do that because he's providing it for free. It's an event that happens 1 time a year. Link is in the description of the YouTube video or on the landing page. It's underneath it. You will have to sign up. It's not just open to public like this one is today. I wanted to make it open to public so everybody could get in and get an idea, see if it's even something they want to do. If you're a songwriter, this is honestly, everybody wants to get in sync. This is one of the coolest things, and it's how the industry has changed over the last few years. And it's something that if you at all are serious about your music and at all wanting the world to hear it, just about, I can't think of a way that is more direct. You know, you can just sit there and play bars till your fingers bleed, and release albums on Spotify that people aren't ever going to listen to unless it somehow gets on some massive playlist or something. And Chris is 100% right. I don't need to be saying that, but he is 100% right. We have tons of artists my wife works with, and sync placement is just, it's massive. And you can go from no one knowing you to literally overnight people knowing who you are, people Shazamming you, people looking you up because they're obsessed with this song. Because remember, a lot of times these placements, right, we're talking about synchronization of music and video. And what happens is when you do that, it's one thing to have a magical song, it's another thing to have a musical a magical video piece, you know. But when you combine the two, that's when the magic really happens. And when they can well that energy up in you while you're watching a movie, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't normally cry. That is the moment when you remember that song and you start searching for that artist. And that's why there's a million artists out there that you've never heard of before, and now all of a sudden they're huge. So that's the kind of nitty gritty that that Chris is going to be getting into. So sorry for all my chitter chatter. We probably have time for one more question. Let me see here if we got one, or if there's something poignant, something that we haven't talked about, Chris, that you want to say on the way out here. It's not like we're going to blow up at 1 o'clock and fast. We're past 1, but if there's something poignant or something we haven't talked about that you want to mention, otherwise I'm going to look for one question here.
Sure. I'll just say, and I'm happy to take one more question after this, but I definitely want to say this one thing is that, you know, I was in a band, you know, and I toured around and we had some success. Like we had a good career. I got a bunch of funny stories I could go on for hours about, but the bottom line is it was great, but I wish I knew then what I know now. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of, what my mission now has been to try to help give a shortcut, like not just a shortcut, a massive shortcut to indie artists who are like trying to figure it out instead of taking years to do it. And then maybe something gets in the way in life, you know, could be marriage, could be like having kids, could be a new job, could be moving, who knows what. Life just is full of evolution and change, right? Things just always are changing. So the time is now, and it's like, how do you get your music out? If you're going to do this, like, and you want to be heard, if you don't care, great, whatever, man, make music, have fun with it, play your guitar as a hobby. Who cares? That's awesome. It's do our own thing. But if you're, on the other hand, if you're somebody who's like, I want the world to hear my music, I want to get it out there, that is what I've dedicated my time to, and try to figure out that shortcut, the perfect shortcut, and that path. And that path, the first step is the panel on Sunday. So that's all I wanted to say is it comes from a place of trying to help you and your music see the light of day and not be lost in an ocean of sound until you just stop making music or trying to get it out there rather. So.
Absolutely. Well, my friends, I'm going to let Chris go because he's got a lot to do this week. Getting ready for this panel and whatnot. So if you're serious about it, if you're a serious songwriter and you want the world to hear your music, this is by far the best way to do it. It's the quickest way to do it. It's the least painful way to do it. And you're going to learn more about it this Sunday. It's free for you guys. Click the link in the description of the video or that's on the landing page. Chris, thank you so much for taking your time today. I know this is a crazy busy week for you. So thank you for sharing this wisdom with us, and thank you for what you do. I mean, it's a passion project for you. I know it's something that is true to your heart, but it's cool, man, because there's a ton of people out there who don't know how to do this, and you're making a way for them. So thank you for all those things, and thanks for being with us today.
Oh, Eric, thank you so much too. I couldn't imagine doing this like for a better community. I don't know anybody here, but I know that they follow you. And so everyone's super, friend of Eric's, friend of mine. And so very cool. And hopefully I'll see you guys on Sunday. It'll be amazing. And let's make 2024, man. Let's make it the year. Let's do something.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. Click that sign up below, my friends, and we will see you. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. See you later. Bye.
Bye.